Everybody, ECBA 602, Lesson 5 review, Lesson 6 preview, coming to you on game day from Dallas, Texas. And, for us, we're not Cowboy fans. And for those of you who've had a class with me before, I think you know I'm a Seattle Seahawk fan, have been for 10 years during the bad and the good, and now the bad again. Here this is our third floor. We call it the Hawk's Nest, and so it's where our kids and their spouses and other people come over and watch the game. You can see in the back we have our Britt jersey. Actually, there's a guy named Justin Britt who's an offensive lineman for Seattle, so we didn't have to go too far to figure out that. I'm wearing my 12th man shirt today. And just glad to be back in the United States to talk to you a little bit about, again, Lesson 5 and then preview Lesson 6 for you this Thanksgiving week. All right? So let's just jump into Lesson 5. Lesson 5 started with a discussion board that talked about your leadership point of view. And I asked you to talk, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. I'm not sure how I got it, so bear with me here. Talked about leadership point of view, and it talked about those people who've had an influence or an impact in your life, not only just personally, but professionally and spiritually. And this is always a really good lesson because one of the things that I like to do, and I've read many of your responses already, and people are very passionate about these, and the people who are influencing their lives. And I like this because, again, the people who influence your lives also influence potentially how you're going to influence other people's lives down the road. And so these are very very impactful. They're very thought-provoking, and they're just a pleasure and a joy to read. The memo exercise this week was the third and final one. It talked about so what. And I hope that you've understood on these memo exercises the whole message behind these. My hope is at some point in time, you're going to be, if you're not there already, the leader of a department, the leader of an organization. And regardless of whether you're making a servant leadership move or you're making some other move, this type of process of doing smaller but more frequent communication to the rank and file members of your organization is a more effective approach, according to surveys, to make sure that change actually happens and that it sticks. And so that's why I wanted to do this, and particularly with servant leadership, I think it's a good exercise because what you're doing each time is you're reinforcing some of the key characteristics for that week. So this week was so what? And as I've mentioned in previous videos, this is really the part that makes it stick. You could talk all you want about what servant leadership is. You can explain to your people in your organization why the organization is moving this to servant leadership. But unless they feel a connection to it in some way or another, the likelihood that it will stick with them and move forward is diminished. And so that's a real key part in doing that. Then this week you also had an application exercise about Alan Lurie talking to this graduate students with a group of rabbis about going forth. And again, the whole message this week is making sure that servant leadership just isn't a concept in your head, but it's something that will stick and move forward. Now, I just want to back up a second because I had a student one time, because of the way that I teach, these courses, the way that I focus as much on you doing some personal digging as well as learning concepts. Someone made a statement one time to me, and they weren't complaining, but they were talking about, they feel like sometimes that my lessons are like going to a psychologist because I'm asking you to really climb inside yourself. And if you recall from the first week video, from the welcome video in this course, one of the things that I mentioned, a lot of the reasons I do these assessments is because I want to move beyond just filling your head full of facts, figures, and knowledge, but I want you to really focus on how this can impact your life. So think of it this way. I don't want you to learn servant leadership concepts. I want you to become a servant leader. And so you see the difference between those two? if all I have to do is just say, okay, memorize the 10 servant leadership characteristics and repeat them to me on a quiz, oh my gosh, how much did you really get out of the course? And so I really want you to become servant leaders in your organizations. And so I think from that perspective, if you look at it that way, then the opportunities for you to really apply and to really move forward with these concepts and really learn them and embrace them and take them to heart, I think are increased substantially. If you've already had MSOM 601 in critical thinking and problem solving with me, or if you have it coming up, I do the same thing. I don't want you to learn critical thinking concepts. I want you to become a critical thinker. I don't want you to learn problem solving techniques and methods. I want you to become a problem solver, okay? And so it's much, much more than just simply regurgitating facts, figures, knowledge, and things that you've learned in the class. So again, that's why I do the things that I do. That's why sometimes this class may seem like a trip to the psychologist, because again, I'm asking you to really climb inside yourself as you look at these. And I hope you enjoy that. I hope it's something that is much more meaningful than just simply, throwing back facts that you read on a paper somewhere else. Okay, so that's a little bit about lesson 5. Let's talk about lesson 6 coming up. This is Thanksgiving week, and I sent out an email just this morning where I talked to you about about my philosophies on this with Thanksgiving. Okay. So I encourage you to make sure that you get all your work done early. I've cut one thing out this week, okay? So rather than having the typical 3 things that you have to do, whether it's 2 discussion boards and an application or 1 discussion board and 2 applications, this week you're just going to have 1 discussion board and 1 application, okay? And so I encourage you to make sure that you get this done early and then enjoy the rest of the week with your family, friends, and everybody else. Again, please don't wait to the last minute on this. And also, don't ask me about an extension, okay? It's not going to happen. My gift to you, my grace to you this week is having you do 2 things versus doing 3 things. Everything is still due Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. This week, okay? So this week talks about 2 additional concepts. It talks about situational leadership in the discussion board question, and then self-leadership in the application. And so situational leadership is actually a course I wished I could teach sometime. It's just, there's so many of these things I would love to develop a course around. But Ken Blanchard, who you've been reading a lot about, actually is one of the authorities that talks about situational leadership. Now, situational leadership is in short supply today. And part of the reason is we have this unrealistic expectation that everybody should be treated equally. Okay? So we should treat everybody, regardless of their skills, regardless of anything else, we should treat them equally. Well, I don't agree. But what I do agree on is we should treat everybody equitably. Okay? So one of the questions I think I ought to ask one of these days on the discussion boards, and maybe you can talk about this if you want to in your discussion board post, is what is the difference between fair and equitable and fair and equal? Okay? So that's something to think about, because again, we take people's skills, we take people's other things, and we homogenize them and try and make everybody the same. Well, no wonder that organizations don't have innovation. No wonder that organizations don't have any creativity, because we try and manage to the middle. We try and treat everybody exactly the same, regardless of their backgrounds. And so that's the whole concept of situational leadership. And Blanchard tells you in the writings that he has and other people will have on this, is that different situations require different actions. And so one of the key things that I want you to get through this week is to take a look at that. Take a look at some of the additional writings on that, and have a very vibrant discussion board on that. All right? And then the second one is self-leadership. Well, sometimes we expect other people to lead us, okay? I always used to tell people about this when I was head of sales for Conagra about training. They thought I was responsible for the training. No, you're responsible for your training. You're responsible for your leadership. And so there are components of that, obviously, that other people will create opportunities and create environments where you can thrive and go forward. But think about this whole concept of self-leadership this week in your paper. And then what I'm asking you to do, please make sure that you answer all the questions, excuse me, in this one. And I'm actually asking you to put together a plan, a self-leadership plan for yourself going forward. All right? I hope you all have a great week. I am home for 3 more days, and then I'll leave again for, gosh, 3-4 weeks. But we'll talk to you soon. Have a great Thanksgiving. If you need me, call me. Thanks.